Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
We don't have just a water problem. We got a democracy problem. We got a dictatorship problem.
Thirsty for democracy, the poisoning of an American city.
It should have never happened. And happening because over, say, $1 million, and then was a place where plenty of money was made. This is not a poor place. You made it poor.
Lead contamination of the water supply of Flint, Michigan has forced residents to drink, cook with, and even bathe in bottled water while still paying some of the highest water bills in the country. In this Democracy Now! Special report, we go from Flint to Mecosta County, Michigan, where the world's largest water bottling company, Nestle, is pumping millions of gallons of water from aquifers that feed Lake Michigan.
This is where the bottled water is being trucked out from Nestle. It's taking the water from our aquifers and it's shipping it all over the world.
How much do they pay for the 200 gallons of water per minute that they're sucking out of the aquifer that feeds Lake Michigan?
As far as I know, they're paying nothing.
Today, voices from the front lines of Michigan's water wars. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Obama says he expects the Senate to do its job and confirm his nominee to replace Justice Antonin Scalia on the Supreme Court. Scalia died on Saturday. Obama says he will nominate a qualified candidate to replace him.
There's not going to be any particular position on a particular issue that determines whether or not I nominate them, but I'm going to present somebody who indisputably is qualified for the seat, and any fair-minded person, even somebody who disagreed with my politics, would say would serve with honor and integrity on the court.
A rising number of Senate Republicans say they'll block any nominee until a new president is in place 11 months from now. A new poll finds Democratic presidential candidates Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders are virtually tied in Nevada ahead of Saturday's caucus. The CNN ORC poll finds 48% of likely caucus goers back Clinton versus 47% for Sanders. The United Nations humanitarian chief says Yemen's experiencing a, quote, humanitarian catastrophe. Stephen O'Brien spoke to the UN Security Council Tuesday.
Since March 2015, more than 35,000 casualties, including over 6,000 deaths, have been reported by health facilities across the country. The United Nations has confirmed that at least 2,997 of those killed and 5,659 of those injured are civilians. Conservative estimates suggest that well over 700 children have been killed and over 1,000 more injured.
The United States and Cuba have signed an agreement to restore regular U.S. commercial flights to Cuba for the first time in more than half a century. U.S. Transportation Secretary Anthony Fox spoke in Havana.
Today is a historic day in the relationship between Cuba and the United States. This morning, with the signing of the MOU, we are signaling that for the first time in more than 5 decades, the United States and Cuba will allow scheduled air service between our two nations.
The Obama administration has also approved the first U.S. factory in Cuba in more than 50 years, allowing a company from Alabama to assemble tractors there. In Utah, more than 100 protesters disrupted a federal auction of oil and gas leases, spontaneously bursting into song until they were forced to leave. Author and activist Terry Tempest Williams, registered as bidder 19, successfully bid on 1,750 acres of land to spare it from fossil fuel extraction. When asked by a Bureau of Land Management official if she was making a legitimate bid for energy development, Tempest Williams said, quote, "You can't define what energy is for us. Our energy development is fueling a movement," she said. Climate activist Tim DeChristopher spent 21 months in prison when he posed as a bidder in a similar move in Utah in 2008. South Dakota could become the first state to ban transgender students from using bathrooms that correspond to their gender identity. A bill passed by the South Dakota Senate Tuesday would force students to use bathrooms and locker rooms that correspond to the sex they were assigned at birth. South Dakota Republican Governor Dennis Dugard has not said for sure if he will sign it. In Chicago, a dozen protesters were arrested after blocking traffic outside an Immigration and Customs Enforcement office to demand the dismantling of ICE, which they call the largest police force in the country. The protesters climbed atop ladders and chained themselves to cement boxes to highlight what they say is a history of abuse by local immigration officers. In Rhode Island, the president of Providence College has signed a list of demands to improve diversity after dozens of students occupied his office to protest racism on campus. President Brian Shanley agreed to take steps toward curriculum reform and more diverse hiring, among other changes. The Catholic College is the latest to see student protests over failures to address campus racism. And Boutros Boutros-Ghali, the first United Nations Secretary General from Africa and the first Arab to hold the post, has died in Egypt at the age of 93. Boutros-Ghali led the UN in the 1990s, a time marked by violence in Rwanda, Bosnia, Somalia, and the former Yugoslavia. His opposition to NATO's bombing campaign in Bosnia angered the United States. In 1996, then-President Bill Clinton and U.S. Representative to the UN Madeleine Albright blocked his renewal, making him the only UN Secretary General to serve only a single term. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Today, we go to Flint, Michigan for a Democracy Now! Special, Thirsty for Democracy, the Poisoning of an American City. In April 2014, an unelected emergency manager appointed by Michigan Governor Rick Snyder switched the source of Flint's drinking water from the Detroit system, which they've been using for half a century, to the corrosive Flint River. Officials thought they could save something like $5 million. Soon after, Flint residents were complaining about discolored and foul-smelling water, which was causing a host of health problems. First, the water was infested with bacteria. To treat the bacteria, the city poured in chlorine, which created a cancerous chemical byproduct called trihalomethanes, or TTHMs. A deadly outbreak of Legionnaire's disease, which is caused by a waterborne bacteria, then spread through Flint, killing 10 people and sickening dozens. At the same time, underground, the Flint River water was corroding Flint's aging pipes, poisoning the drinking water with lead, which can cause permanent damage, especially in children. Well, this past weekend, we went to Flint to learn the remarkable story of how Michigan Governor Rick Snyder and other officials ignored and covered up residents' complaints for a year and a half, and how Flint fought back with protests, citizen journalism, a new elected mayor, and a massive resident lead testing project. What took so long? Who is responsible? Today, thirsty for democracy, we spent the weekend in Flint. I'm Amy Goodman. This is Democracy Now! We're in Flint, Michigan at the Golden Gate Restaurant. It's a cold, snowy Saturday morning. Inside, the Flint Democracy Defense League is having breakfast and a meeting. I want to go in and talk to Clara McClinton. She's one of the lead organizers for democracy in Flint against the poisoning of the Flint water. She's been challenging the emergency managers for years. Let's go inside.
In 2011, this governor, Governor Snyder, signed into law a law called the Emergency Manager Law. It enabled the governor to send an emergency manager under the guise of being fiscally responsible to cities and school districts that they deemed financially in fiscal crisis. It just so happened most of these places were majority African-American cities. Privatizing services and selling off assets. That's their main purpose. Well, here in Flint, they've privatized our garbage collection. They've sold off our parks.
Was Santa Claus sold off?
Yes, that's how low we've gotten. They sold Santa Claus, the Santa Claus that was was mounted on top of City Hall every year.
Tell us what happened.
There is a coordinated, aggressive effort to privatize our water system. And this is how we came to this poison water catastrophe.
How?
We were being told that the Detroit water system, which we got our water from, was charging too much money, and we're going to build this new pipeline so you folks can have cheaper water. While we build the pipeline, why don't we go to the river? You know, the one that General Motors dumped all that crap and stuff in, all the industrial toxins and stuff. We'll go to that river in the interim. And these decisions were made by an emergency manager. And that's the untold story about the problem we have here. We don't have just a water problem. We got a democracy problem. We got a dictatorship problem. We got a problem of being stripped of our democracy as we've known it over the years. And for someone to come to our city, a proud city with a rich labor history.
You're from an auto workers family. You have a long history here. Talk about how that influenced you.
We had the first city of our size to elect the African-American mayor. We passed an open housing ordinance in the city of Flint, one of the first, very historic. We have such a rich history, the sit-down strike of 1937. We're just not type of people that's used to being walked on.
That's Claire McClinton of the Democracy Defense League. While she was conducting her breakfast meeting, a woman came in extremely upset named Kawana Armstrong. She said she needed to get clean water to her infant grandson. Another woman, a member of the meeting, Audrey Muhammad, said she had just bought water and she would give it to Kawana. So they went out into the parking lot to take the water from Audrey's trunk and put it into Kawana's. So you came into this restaurant this morning and you met with this woman who you just bumped into her. And can you tell me your name?
It's Audrey Muhammad.
And you heard that she's trying to get some clean water for her infant grandson.
Yes, ma'am.
So why do you have this in your trunk?
Well, I went to the store the other day and purchased the water for myself, and I just hadn't taken it out the car, so she can have it. I'll go get some more. That's not a problem. That's not a problem at all.
And I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
really do.
Yes, ma'am.
I appreciate it.
What will you do with this water?
It's for my grandson. It's for my grandson. My first grandchild, and it's a boy.
Yes.
It's for my grandson. He was born February 6th. That's my concern. It's my grandson. That's my concern.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's a shame. This is 2016, and we living like this. And this man want us to pay for this.
Sorry, it's frozen, beloved.
It's all right.
Do you have to pay for water? I mean,
I've been buying water to drink forever, for the longest.
I mean paying for the water in your tap.
Oh, yeah, I just paid a shut-off notice January 6th, $196.
Wait, they were going to shut your poisoned water off?
I guess they sent me a shut-off notice. I got the shut-off notice the day after Christmas, and it was for December 29th, and I called down there, and they told me my water about to be shut off at any time. So a friend of mine, while I was at work, she went down there and paid my shut-off notice $196.
How do you feel about paying for this contaminated water?
I'm not comfortable with it at all, and I don't think it's fair. The cold water, especially in my kitchen, when I turned it on, it had this foul, raw egg smell.
This is when they first connected to the river?
I went down there to the city and I talked to Howard, because even my postman was complaining about the smell.
And Howard is the head of water and
At that time, Public Works, at that time he was. And because my postman parked his truck right there in front of my house, and there's a drain there. And we thought it was something in the sewage, okay? But it got worse, especially the hot days when Flint was like 85, 90 degrees. When you turn the faucet on, it was dark brown. Then as the water ran, it goes golden brown. So when Claire called me and told me about Virginia Tech was coming in to test the water, and the professor was doing it free, I volunteered. And they came in my house the first week of August, because I got my results back, and I tested positive for lead.
They still okay frozen, aren't they?
I'm going to use this for my grandbaby. But you know a thing, I want to ask Governor Snyder, because he been having the town hall meetings during early in the day, and I'm at work.
Where do you work?
at TRW Automotive in Tyrone Township. And I got a message on my phone telling me to hold the line. But when they called, it was like 10:30 in the morning. I have to be at work at 6. If it was his grandchild, would he want this? I don't have the money he have. I respect him because he's the governor of Michigan. But if it was his grandchild, would he want it?
So we've just come from the Golden Gate restaurant in Flint, actually Flint Township, and this is very interesting, where the Democracy Defense League was meeting over breakfast. That particular restaurant gets water from Flint Township, which is not the corrosive Flint River, but right across Flushing Road, you got it, Flushing Road, that's where they're linked up to the Flint River. Right here at St. Michael's Church, scores of people have gathered. They're going to be canvassing houses, seeing what people need, and they're also formulating demands for the governor.
Help us to reestablish good drinking water here in Flint on a regular basis, a safe basis that we can learn to trust again.
Let's talk to Naira Sharif. She's with Democracy Defense League and Flint Rising. Can you talk about what the big challenge is today?
Well, there's many people who don't know what to use with their water, with the lead in their water. Then also there's a challenge of accurate information, so that's the need of us going door to door, handing out accurate information, lifting up everyone's stories, because everyone has been impacted by this water crisis, and to make sure that they have their basic needs met. So fresh water, filters, replacement filters, and so we're also delivering those too.
Can you talk about your response to the governor recall, the attempts to recall the governor?
There's many people around the state who feel like his response to this crisis has been inadequate and really a violation of human rights.
What do you think should happen?
Well, the people who want to recall him, if a petition goes in front of me, I will sign it. But right now, my efforts is to make sure that people have accurate information and that we push for some of these long-term solutions that, regardless of who's in office, that they're going to have to address.
And what are those long-term solutions?
For us to have our pipes replaced, for Flint residents to be made whole, to have adequate health care and wraparound services for everyone who has been impacted by the water crisis. So the children who have lead poisoning, what sort of lifetime services are going to be available for them, making sure that residents, not only the pipes or the modern mains are replaced, but residents' homes and appliances are also replaced. And finally, we're still paying a premium price for toxic water, so we need to remedy that.
I'm Lori Carpenter. I'm with Crossing Water, with a small NGO based out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. And we are activated based on these canvassers who go out, and if they find that there's need in the houses based on whether they need water filters, they're homebound, elderly, if they have other social service needs. We have a team of social workers that we've hooked up with the National Association of Social Workers out of Michigan, and they're all volunteers. We're all volunteers. We have plumbers, maintenance people, we have paramedics, firefighters. We go out in teams to the houses, and we provide the services that we're activated for.
Maybe we could go inside and you could introduce me to folks and we'll talk to them.
Water, no filters, nursing moms, pregnant moms, homebound folks, seniors, okay? And those are the priorities.
Just to add one thing real quick. So if somebody asks for water, we always give everybody water. If they need water, if they ask for water, we don't ask any questions, we don't ask for any ID, we don't ask for any names. It's yes.
You may run into folks' households, you bring water in, and you see they've got a whole wall of water already. They're hoarding water. So some folks are really put off by that. And I've got kind of a different take on that. If I had a family and I couldn't get water to them, I sure as hell be hoarding every bottle of water that came to me. I'd be going to every fire station filling up, because you don't know when the next bottle of water is coming to you.
My name's Leo Wilhelm, and we're with IATSE Local 38 from Detroit.
And what are you doing here today in Flint?
We're here to volunteer, help pass out water or canvas, whatever the AFL-CIO needs us to do.
And can you talk about how you got word and how you were organized to come here?
It was really, it kind of welled up from our last union meeting, actually. These guys were talking about it, milling about after the meeting, and just wanted to do something.
I'm Melissa Mays from What Are You Fighting For? And it's a play on words, so it's water, W-A-T-E-R, you fighting for.
Melissa, do you live in Flint?
I do live in Flint.
How have you been affected by the poisoned water?
Well, all three of my sons are anemic now. They have bone pain every single day. They miss a lot of school because they're constantly sick. Their immune systems are compromised. Myself, I have seizures. I have diverticulosis now. I have to go in February 25th for a consultation on a liver biopsy. Almost every system of our bodies have been damaged, and I know that we're not the only one. I'm getting calls from people that are so sick and they don't know what to do.
How old are your boys?
11, 12, and 17. And they're wonderful kids that they put forth all this effort to get straight A's, to get good grades. My oldest, it's little things that he seems to forget, like pluses and minuses, different words he can't, there's a brain fog that's settled on everybody.
Mayor Weaver has called for $55 million to replace the lead pipes. Is that happening?
We're still waiting. The governor said you can have 25 million of that. 55 million is just a start to get the lead service lines out, because the plumbers are also talking about how the copper lines need to go, as well as galvanized. Any kind of metal has been so corroded, and these byproducts are all neurotoxins. So you got copper, lead, aluminum, tin, chromium, things that our bodies can't handle, and these pipes need to go. And so the 55 million is a start to get to the most needed people, the pregnant, the elderly, the small children. And he, out of 55 million, said 25 million.
What should happen with Governor Snyder?
I feel that he's in the way. He has been standing in the way of us getting the funding that we need to get these pipes replaced, to get crews in here, to get it going and get it started. So he needs to be removed from office. He just doesn't show any real concern. He has not put any effort into actually making up for the failures of his agencies. So he just needs to go.
We're in from New York, from where 9/11 took place, the attacks on the World Trade Center in Washington, the Pentagon. The government said after that the biggest fear was an international terrorist would poison the water supply of a major city. Well, an international terrorist didn't do this, but a major city's water supply was poisoned. Your city, Flint. The government, the Michigan government, the governor, Rick Snyder, involved with this. What are your thoughts?
Well, it's bad enough that the Geneva Convention says in an act of war you cannot poison a city's water supply. We're not in war, but guess what? It kind of seems like it, because a whole city's water supply was poisoned by our state government, and it allowed to continue. I mean, they knew in October of 2014 when General Motors said we cannot use this water anymore because it's corroding our parts. The water is bad. The city lost $400,000 in revenue. So that had to be signed off on by the emergency manager and the governor. They knew the water was bad then. And if it was not okay for car parts, how is it okay for citizens?
And the Democratic primary presidential debate is happening here on March 6th. Do you know where it's happening? Are you going to be there? Hillary Clinton was here recently. We hear Bernie Sanders is coming in before the debate. What demands do you have of them?
I want to know what they're going to do about this. I want to know that if they become president, if they're elected, what are they going to do to stop this? Because it's not just happening in Flint. This is happening in other cities, and the environmental injustice needs to stop. They need to stop putting it off. They need to stop ignoring the problem and hoping that it'll go away. So I want to hear strong statements and commitments by the presidential candidates that they're not going to allow this to happen anywhere else.
Would you mind if we follow you as you go out into the community to give out water?
No, I welcome it. I want people to see what's actually happening to us and what we have to do to help each other.
We're volunteering to check to see if you have water, if you have a filter.
Yes, I have all of that.
Okay, are there any, she's going to ask you this, we're just checking on everybody.
These are real quick. My name's Melissa Mays, and we're volunteering, checking on how everything's going with the water situation, and so we just have a few questions. Just as we're trying to make sure that nobody gets left out or forgotten.
Are you Floyd by chance?
No,
okay.
I'm not Floyd.
What's your
Floyd Pass. My name is Troy.
Okay. Hi, Troy. I'm Lynna. I'm a volunteer.
I'm Melissa Mays. I live here.
Do you have a water filter?
Yes, I do.
And how long have you had that?
I had mine filtered probably maybe about 4 weeks.
4 weeks? Okay. And do you have replacement cartridges for it?
Yeah, I stopped and got all that.
And how often are you replacing them?
Well, since I don't be here because of the situation, I'm always, I go on outskirts to do what I got to do, because then they just had a break over there on Stewart Street, and I'm so close to it, so I decided not to be trying to get in it, because, but as far as getting in it, I've been in it for 2 years without knowing it, so I'm not going around to say what I have to say about it. Whatever's in me is already in me. And I just accepted it and just pray that whatever that's in me, they come up with something to help me get it out of me. So yes, I'm affected by it, if that's what you're trying to get to.
Yeah,
Is it a discomfort? Yes, it is. It's all this going through, what I've been sacrificing for families and friends, getting them water. That's why, by the van being open, I was blessed to be able to be a blessing for others.
I kind of want to hug you because we're all in this together, and it's just terrible.
So based on all of that, everything is discomfort. From everything. You cannot, you got babies, there ain't enough water at one time to get in the tub to give them what they need. There's people that are affected that don't know they're affected. As you can see, totally.
My skin's falling off.
I have totally dryness from the water, taking baths in this. I believe I'm affected by it.
Bone pain, muscle pain.
I don't have the energy that I normally have and all that, so, and I know I'm affected by it.
So now we just got to deal with the after effects. And we're also not helping with that either.
Yeah. So my saying of everything, it should have never happened.
Agreed.
And happening because over saving little dollars, and then you was a place where plenty of money was made. This is not a poor place. You made it poor.
Flint resident Troy Perkins, just a few of the voices from the front lines of Michigan's water wars. This is Democracy Now!, thirsty for democracy, the poisoning of American City. While Flint residents are still paying some of the highest water bills in the country, we'll look at how the world's largest water bottling company, Nestle, is pumping millions of gallons of water from aquifers nearby that feed Lake Michigan. We'll be back in a minute.
You have to fight for the water. True protectors of the water, all the women. To politicians, sharks eating fishes. It's big business, big business. They don't think 7 generations ahead. They got the knowledge to stop it. They feed their pockets instead. See, they make the laws, then throw you in their prisons. All this white supremacy, environmental racism. Welcome to America, leave your hope at the door. Cause Snyder's like a sniper with his focus on the poor. This don't happen in the burbs or where the politicians live. Wouldn't get that same water to the politicians, kid. I don't think so. The evil doing keeps us in the ruins. They trying to depopulate. We looked at less than human, and things getting heavier. That's just the light low. Black label plus red land equals white gold. They liars in suits and ties, grade A pretenders. It's not an accident. It's all part of the agenda. Knocking for centuries.
Pay to be Poisoned, featuring Zebra Octobra and Lisa Brunk, produced by Native Keys. Today, a Democracy Now! Special, Thirsty for Democracy, the poisoning of an American city. I'm Amy Goodman. We're in Flint, Michigan. It's sunset at the Flint water plant. I'm standing in front of the Flint water tower. Just down the road is the GM engine plant. It was October of 2014 that GM recognized that the Flint water was corroding its engines. They got permission from the unelected emergency manager of Flint to disconnect from the Flint River and go back to the Detroit water. It would be another year before the people of Flint were finally allowed to disconnect from the corrosive Flint River as their water supply and hook up again with the Detroit water. We're going to go talk to a GM worker who works at the plant and worked there at the time that GM recognized and the state acknowledged that they could no longer use Flint water because it was destroying the engines.
My name is Ronald Jameson, known as Coach Hollywood.
And how long have you worked at the Flint engine plant?
For 39 years, going on 40 this year.
Wow. So you were working there when Flint hooked up with the Flint River and was disconnected from the Detroit water supply?
Yes.
What happened at the plant?
Well, from what I hear, it basically was saying that it was causing corrosion. And what that was causing, they were saying something to the fact of what they were putting in the water. And they were saying, we got this stuff called rust inhibitor that keeps the engines from rusting while they're waiting to have oil put on. And they went, I guess, tested it and found out, I guess, we were putting too much chlorine in the water. And so they told Flint that you're causing us to lose engines, because we have to tear them down and get the rust out before we can send them back.
And so the emergency manager gave you a waiver and said you can disconnect from the Flint River and go back to the Detroit water system?
Well, what they did, they made an agreement, from what I hear, that they could leave, but once we got our water back right, that they would come back.
And you never got your water right?
No.
So how did you feel? I mean, you were a worker in the plant, but you're also a Flint resident, and that very water that was causing rust in the engine, you were drinking here in Flint.
Matter of fact, they took all the water fountains out of the plant. We have all water coolers throughout the plant.
So what do you think about this?
To be serious, I made a joke to one of the supervisors that I was going to sue them because they knew something had to be wrong, and they never said nothing. All they said was, we're not going to use it.
That was Ronald Jameson. His friends call him Hollywood. He's worked at the Flint engine plant for 39 years. So the emergency manager decides that to preserve the engines, the GM plant can switch back to the Detroit water system. But the people of Flint could not. What is Michigan's emergency manager law, Public Act 436, which was pushed through after a similar law, PA4, was defeated in a 2-to-1 statewide referendum? We went to City Hall to find out.
Eric Mays, First Ward City Councilman for the city of Flint. I represent the First Ward, which is the farthest north end of the city of Flint, about 11,000 residents. I would say it's about 96% or so black, and you know, we've got all the issues, high crime, abandoned houses.
So explain how the emergency manager worked and how the decision was made to switch to the Flint River.
If you look at Public Act 436 and even Public Act 4, whenever a city was in so-called quote-unquote or quote emergency financial distress or financial trouble, unquote, whoever defined that and however the city got there with a general fund budget deficit, the governor would appoint a review team, and the review team might recommend an emergency manager come in. In my opinion, some of that was created because the governor took revenue sharing away from cities and helped create financial distress, about $55 million at some point from the city of Flint.
Wait, you're saying they take the money from Flint and they send it elsewhere in Michigan?
In this case, money was taken from Flint, Detroit, and other municipalities, and the governor then boasted in some cases a surplus for the state. And so that's why we say in some cases the governor helped create the deficit and then would send in an emergency manager.
So explain what happened. How was the decision made?
In about April of 2014, I got a notification that it was some activity going on over at the water plant. And when I got there, the emergency manager was there, down there early. The mayor was there. Council people was there. I was one of them. I seen other officials there. The police chief was there. And when I caught on to what was going on, it was a countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then the button was pushed and one light went on red and yet green, and you know, it's recorded and documented. And so then after that, there was a gathering in the plant because this button is pushed outside in the back somewhere, and then we walked from there, and then they did a toast. And, you know, to show we're drinking now river water. And because of the stigma of the river, I wouldn't really, I held it up, but I didn't feel comfortable guzzling it down with them. And they was, go ahead and drink. And I was like, you know, so, you know, that's kind of what went down. So I was leery from the beginning, but I had no idea. I knew nothing about some of the bacteria. I knew nothing about TTHMs, trihalomethanes. I knew nothing about lead, and I knew nothing about possible Legionnaires.
So you introduced a bill in March of 2015 to say return to Detroit's water. What happened to it?
I put a motion on the floor, And that motion passed 7 or 8 to 1 to return to the Detroit water. And I think then President Josh Freeman was the only no vote. And so the emergency manager, I think it was then emergency manager Ambrose, I think he talked publicly like that was not something that was smart or shouldn't have been done. He used some distinct words.
He used the word, it's incomprehensible that your city council voted 7 to 1 to go back to Detroit's water. I have the quote of the emergency manager, Jerry Ambrose, who said, Flint water today is safe by all U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and Michigan Department of Environmental Quality standards, and the city is working daily to improve its quality. It's incomprehensible to me that 7 members of the Flint City Council would want to send more than $12 million a year to the system serving Southeast Michigan, even if Flint ratepayers could afford it. Lake Huron water from Detroit is no safer than the water from Flint.
Well, he was wrong. In my opinion, he was wrong. And it was not meeting all the EPA standards. We found out Kurt Guyette with the ACLU did some good research, and, you know, he discovered to me that the city of Flint was submitting samples of water where they had been pre-flushing, which you shouldn't pre-flush when you're testing for certain things. That water should set at least for 6 hours and then you test. We found out they were testing maybe certain places that didn't have lead pipes. And so there was some what we call skewed tests and samples.
That was Flint City Councilman Eric Mays. He sponsored the legislation to switch Flint back to Detroit water half a year before the governor finally allowed the city to switch back. We wanted to follow up on what Councilman Mays was saying about the lead tests, so we went to speak with Kurt Guyette of the ACLU. He's actually an investigative reporter who's just won Michigan Journalist of the Year. We asked him about the work he did with Professor Mark Edwards, a nationally recognized lead contamination expert at Virginia Tech.
Sitting around one night thinking, how can we get to the truth? How can we get this beyond what was at point he said, she said kind of thing? And I thought, oh, well, geez, maybe we could do our own test, because I had some money in my grant to pay for experts to do research for us. And so I called up Mark and said, how much does it cost for each test? He said, no, $70. How much does it cost, or how many do you need, how many homes do you need to sample to get a scientifically valid sample? He said, oh, 50 at minimum, 100 would be better. So we started talking with the citizens, seeing if they thought we could pull it off. They were very confident that we could pull it off. Mark was confident that they could do it on their end. And so there was like this unique collaboration, really, between the scientists at Virginia Tech, me as a journalist becoming involved in it, and then the citizens themselves, who are really, again, in the forefront of, you know, getting all these test kits distributed throughout the city. You know, we ended up collecting 4 times as many as the city and state had collected in the previous 6 months in like a 3-week period.
And then there was Dr. Mona.
Yes.
Explain what she did over at Hurley Medical Center, the pediatrician.
So in August of 2015, the citizens working with Mark Edwards and this whole team of Virginia Tech, who were working around the clock. You know, on this side, we're working like crazy to get the kits distributed and collected and making sure we're keeping track of everything, which was complicated. But, you know, they were doing it with the index cards and everything. And then as soon as the sample kits started being returned, 12 at a time, we'd box them up and send them back to Virginia Tech. And they're working around the clock to get them analyzed, because as soon as they start seeing the results, they're going, oh no, this is bad. This is bad. And, you know, by the time they got the first 24 bottles, They knew. There were so many with elevated levels that they knew that this was a crisis. And so they created a website, the flintwaterstudy.org website, which is incredible. And they started posting results. And then people with elevated levels of lead in their water, they start calling them up and saying, stop drinking your water. It's dangerous. Dr. Mona Hanna-Attisha, a pediatrician at Flint's Hurley Medical Center, saw the results that Virginia Tech had produced, saw what high lead levels there really were in the water, and as a result of that, after I think talking to a friend, came up with their own idea. She came up with the idea of looking at records that were already on hand that for the lead blood levels in children under 5 in Flint and in Genesee County as a whole. And what she found in analyzing thousands of samples was that after the switch was made to the river, the percentage of children in Flint with elevated levels of lead in their blood doubled.
Michigan Reporter of the Year, Kurt Guyette. This is a Democracy Now! Special, Thirsty for Democracy, the poisoning of an American city. We'll be back in a minute. Handel's water music. I'm Amy Goodman. This is Democracy Now! Special, Thirsty for Democracy, the poisoning of an American city. Well, as Flint residents are forced to drink, cook with, and even bathe in bottled water while still paying some of the highest water bills in the country for their poisoned water, we turn to a little-known story about the bottled water industry in Michigan. In 2001 and 2002, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality issued permits to Nestle, now the largest water bottling company in the world, to pump up to 400 gallons of water per minute from aquifers that feed Lake Michigan. This sparked a decade-long legal battle between Nestle and the residents of Mecosta County, where Nestle's water wells are located. One of the most surprising things about this story is that in Mecosta County, Nestle is not really required to pay anything to extract the water besides a small permitting fee to the state and the cost of a lease to a private landowner. In fact, the company received $13 million in tax breaks from the state of Michigan to locate the plant there. The spokesperson for Nestle in Michigan is Deborah Muchmore. She's the wife of Dennis Muchmore. That's Michigan Governor Rick Snyder's chief of staff, who he just retired and registered to be a lobbyist. Well, we reached out to Nestle for comment on the story. We didn't speak with Deborah Muchmore, but we did speak with Jane Lazen of Nestle Waters, who said, quote, "We're deeply invested in the Muskegon River watershed and its sustainability. Our water use is always permitted and compliant with the permitting authorities," unquote. But residents of Mecosta County have another story to tell. So let's take a look at Nestle and the battle over the Great Lakes, which are 20% of the world's fresh water. This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman. We're in Flint, Michigan, where yesterday, on Saturday, we spent the day following residents who were checking on their neighbors. Do they have water? Is their filter working? Do they have children in the house? Have they been tested for lead? Just being good neighbors, also making sure that they had bottled water. One of the astounding things we learned is that residents are still paying for their lead-poisoned water. When we first pulled into Flint, Michigan the other night, we came behind, well, right here, the municipal building in Flint. There, the National Guard was giving out water. Today, assigned Flint Water Distribution Center. They gave us a case of Ice Mountain 100% natural spring water. It's made by Nestle. Now, one of the things that a number of people were talking about is that Nestle, which has a plant a couple hours north of here, a bottling plant, is sucking water out of Lake Michigan for free. So today we're going to head north to Mecosta County to the Nestle bottling plant to speak with a group of women who live in the area, who've been engaging in a legal battle against Nestle for years. Let's go. I'm Amy Goodman, this is Democracy Now! We're here in Stanwood, Michigan. It's about 3 hours north of Detroit, and it's here that Nestle has its Ice Mountain bottled water plant. We're joined right now by Peggy Case. She is the current president of Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation. Can you talk about this plant, Peggy?
Well, this is where the bottled water is being trucked out from Nestle. It's taking the water from our aquifers and it's shipping it all over the world. So
we're talking about 200 gallons per minute is being sucked out of the aquifer that feeds Lake Michigan?
Yes, so the water from this plant is coming from several wells, one in Mecosta and two in Everett, and they are now pumping 218 gallons per minute. They wanted to do 400.
But you stopped them from a decade-long lawsuit.
That's true.
How much do they pay for the 200 gallons of water per minute that they're sucking out of the aquifer that feeds Lake Michigan?
As far as I know, they're paying nothing.
Let's go talk to Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation. Hello. How are you? You're Peggy. Hi. Very nice to see you. Hi.
I'm Terry Swear.
Oh, hi, Terry.
Nice to meet you. Hi, I'm Glenna.
Oh, hi, Glenna. How are you?
My name is Terry Swear, and I live in Mecosta County, which is probably about 3 hours from Flint, 2.5, 3 hours from Flint, Michigan. I was the original president of Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation that took Nestle to court.
I'm Peggy Case. I live near Traverse City, Michigan. I am about 2 hours away from Mecosta County, north of here. I became president of Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation when Terry retired.
Hi, I'm Glenna Manicky, and I'm on the board of Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation, currently the treasurer.
In 2000, when Nestle came into the area, to Mecosta County, explain what they were coming in to do.
In 2000, we found that Nestle had come to Mecosta County and was meeting with elected officials, and what Nestle was asking for was a place that they would be able to take water, a bottling plant, and selling the water, which they basically, what Nestle did was basically sold the water to us, and it was already our water.
Peggy Case, can you explain what was the water, the body of water they were drawing from?
So the water that Nestle is bottling here and elsewhere in our state is coming from the Great Lakes Basin. It is feeding here into Deadstream and Cold Creek, then into the Little Muskegon River, that aquifer, and then eventually, ultimately, into Lake Michigan. So it's Great Lakes Basin water. It's part of the commons. It belongs to all of us. And part of the reason the people in Mecosta were pretty upset about it is that the extraction of that water was being taken out of the watershed. It was being, the streams were being pumped down to the point where the dead stream looked like a mud hole at one point, and bottled and shipped all over the world.
How is it possible that Nestle, which is making an enormous profit on this water, doesn't actually have to pay for the water it's drawing?
They're drawing the water from a well on private land, for one thing. It would be no different if they came to my house, where I have a well, and asked to use my well to put water in a truck and cart it away. And if I said yes, they have the right to do that.
But this massive public resource, water, we're not talking about feeding a family of 4 or 5. We're talking about 400 gallons per minute around the day, around the month, around the year.
Right. It's criminal.
Why wouldn't there be laws that say when you take this public resource, you have to pay for it, since people are paying for that water, including you if you buy, for example, Ice Mountain?
Well, I don't know why it's legal to do that. They get a permit from the state that allows them to do that. I personally don't believe that we should be doing that with our water. We should not be privatizing the water. That it amounts to privatizing the water.
Terry, take us through this decade-long lawsuit against Nestle.
We began in the circuit court. We had seen what Nestle was proposing to do and decided that we needed to take Nestle to court. That was the only way that Nestle would ever realize that, yes, we did want our water, we wanted to protect our water, and the water was ours, not theirs. This lasted for, like I said before, this lasted for 8 years. And in that time, with lawyer fees and all the fees that come with going to court, we spent over $1 million.
Glenna Manneke, you're the treasurer of Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation. How did you raise this money? It cost like $1 million to take on Nestle?
We scrambled for every penny we could get. We did 50-50 raffles among us, or anybody else we could get into it. We did yard sales. We wrote grants. We had bake sales. Help me out here. Pasties were part of the bake sale.
What are pasties?
Pasties are a meat-vegetable concoction that's kind of localized to Michigan.
And you were able to raise how much through all of this?
We are out of debt now.
We raised $1 million with no corporate money, no government money. At one point, Nestle even offered us some kind of a grant, and Terry said, "Are you kidding? No way."
Terry Swear, can you talk about Nestle actually personally going after you?
My son and I both had some problems. There was a SLAPP suit against my son.
You're talking about a SLAPP suit, strategic lawsuit against public participation, that's SLAPP?
That is where, to put it very, very simply, it is where the company, Nestle, they wrote the letter to Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation's lawyer saying that my son, Chris, was not speaking nicely about Nestle, surprise, surprise, and that they were going to do a SLAPP suit.
Did they send private investigators to your home?
We had these private investigators show up. And then we also had the FBI coming to our homes.
Glenna Manneke, did you have any family members, or you yourself, were you approached by the FBI?
Well, this is hearsay from my family members, but there had been a small, explosion or bomb or what was it, set off at the wellhead. And they had decided that it was my uncle who had done it. And so the FBI came to his house to arrest him. And they found him in his wheelchair with neither one of his prostheses on. It was the highlight of his life.
So when we came into Flint a few nights ago, we went behind the municipal building, and the National Guard was distributing water to people who drove up, and they gave us a case of Ice Mountain water. And Ice Mountain is made by Nestle, actually right down the road from here in Mecosta County. So you have a situation where the people of Flint, their water supply is poisoned, and they're now being donated, or they have to buy bottled water. A lot of that is Nestle water. Nestle as a corporation overall, I think it posted $14 billion in profit in 2014. Can you talk about this connection?
I want to know why we don't have FEMA bringing in the tanker trucks that they, I'm sure, have available. Why aren't they taking the groundwater that Nestle is taking and providing it to the people in larger containers?
Well, it's interesting because we did see big FEMA pallets of water as well.
The National Guard is distributing small bottles of water. They are certainly capable of finding some trucks to bring in groundwater from endless aquifers here that Nestle is getting for free, and the people of Flint should get it for free too.
It's quite amazing. You have people having to pay for their poisoned water in Flint.
$140 a month, roughly.
Some of the highest rates in Michigan and in the country.
Yes.
And then you have but now, because under enormous pressure, the state government says they're not going to engage in cutoffs of water. But here you have Detroit, which actually has clean water. So the people in Flint, they will continue to get their poisoned water. But the people in Detroit who have clean water, they're having their water cut off.
Right. I call it criminal behavior. It's also, in my mind, it's environmental racism.
What do you mean by environmental racism?
These are cities that are predominantly African-American cities. These are the ones that have been taken over by emergency managers.
It's hard not to notice that the leadership of these organizations, whether in Detroit or dealing with the poisoned water in Flint to here, that you are women. What is it about you gals?
I have 2 sons and I have 2 grandchildren, and that's who I work for. I mean, I do. I work for my children and my grandchildren. We're also very concerned about climate change. We're concerned about what kind of planet we're leaving for our children. I think women tend to maybe be a little closer to that feeling or that kind of passion. For me, it's a moral imperative. I have to leave something better than what I found, and we're having, as a species, a hard time doing that these days. So I have, I've been an activist all my life, pretty much.
Terry, as Peggy said, she was an activist all her life. You were shaking your head. You weren't?
I have never been involved in anything like what we're doing right now. And never thought I could do it, never thought I would have to do it. But I agree with Peggy. You can see the lake that I live on. And one day, I just stood there and I looked. I have 5 grandchildren, 2 sons, 2 daughter-in-laws. And it's like, I cannot let this happen. I'm a 3rd generation who lives here. And this means so much to me that I could not just walk away from it.
That was Terry Swear, Peggy Case, and Glenna Manicky of Michigan Citizens for Water Conservation at Terry's home in Mecosta County, Michigan. That does it for our special Thirsty for Democracy, the Poisoning of an American City. If you want to get a copy, go to democracynow.org. And special thanks to Democracy Now!'s Laura Gottesdiener, Sam Alcoff, and Dennis Moynihan, and to Kate Levy and No Town, the movie. Happy birthday to Neil Shibata. Speaking of birthdays, February 19th, Friday, marks the 20th anniversary of Democracy Now!'s first broadcast. To help us celebrate, take a photo or a video, tell us who you are, where you tune in, and why you need Democracy Now!, and post it online with the hashtag #HappyBirthdayDN. We'll feature maybe your message on the show. Special thanks to Mike Burke, Carla Wells. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.